That right there.
That way it was.
Yeah. No, he's an expert now.
Practicing all day. It was the internet.
Five thirty, I'll call the regular City of White Lakes Council meeting to order for Monday, May 12th, 5:30, roll call please.
Councilors Grant,
Here.
Jarla, here, Hackman,
Here.
Matheson, here. Mayor Scott,
Here.
we have quorum, will council.
All right, please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alrighty, moving on to the consent agenda. Has everybody had a chance to read through that? Any sort of questions, comments, concerns, anything like that? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion to accept the consent agenda as is.
So,
We have a motion from Councilor Jarla. Anybody that would like to second or support that?
Support.
We have a support from Councilor Grant. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Moving on to the guests and citizens forum. Does anybody have anything to say or question?
Hi, thank you. My name is Jim Kempke. I'm a homeowner here at White Lakes. I had some ideas I want to pass on. That would help support local businesses. Help us keep the ones we have, maybe bring some new businesses in, also help the revenue issues in this town. Some of you have seen the ideas. I have many of them. I'll just focus on two tonight because I know I'm time limited. The first one is that White Lakes could readily and easily establish a mountain bike trail. Many small towns in northern Minnesota have created a mountain bike trail. Chisholm has, Crosby has, Detroit Lakes is building one, Cohasset has. Now, if you look online, you can see that Chisholm says that their mountain bike trail they've only had for a few years has brought in over $1 million to local businesses. We could be doing that here in White Lakes. The good news is it would not cost the city of White Lakes anything, $0. I've already mapped out the trail using old access trails, old logging trails and some old cross-country ski trails that I helped build back in the 1970s. It also tells you how old I am. It could be readily done. All we would need to do is send a letter to Elite asking for permission because most of these trails would be on their property. The property would be generally between the hotel and Stephen Chambers. This is very easy to do. I've created many trails in the last few years, some of which have been on Elite property. It takes about 4 or 5 minutes to send them an email. They respond readily. Elite is very eager to be a good community partner and to work with you. There's no problem with that at all. As far as actually doing the trail, I'd be willing to create it myself. Like I say, much of the trail is already in existence, so it basically involves some basic groundwork, weed eating, some shoveling, stuff like that. I could work on it this summer. We could get it going. The trail I have designed right now is about 8 to 10 miles. If it turns out that that is very workable, we could easily expand that. What I would just need would be your approval to go ahead and somebody in the city to write the letter to Elite. If you have any questions about that, I'll be glad to take them, or any comments. Otherwise, I'll move on to my second point tonight.
Is it on, just Elite property, or is it on city property or county property at all, or is it just going through the?
Almost all of it. If you look on the county Land Explorer website, 95% of it is on Lee property. I mean, the rest is on White Lakes property.
Okay.
There's no county property involved.
It's not on like the four-wheeler trails or anything?
Oh,
like
no,
that, where
no,
that's-
we would say, we don't want to get run over.
Yeah, well, that's,
Yeah.
I know like that area.
Yeah, I use that four-wheel trail myself. No, it, nothing to do with the snowmobile or the four-wheel trail.
And you've got 8 to 10 miles figured out just
Yeah.
up there.
Yeah,
Amazing.
and you know, hey, if anyone wants to take a little tour, I have a side-by-side. I'll be glad to take anybody for a tour of the trails. And I think most of you have my contact information, so I'm available to do that. Give me a call, send me an email. Second point, and this is a little more complicated, is about the Hoyt Lakes Industrial Park. I think we are in a very bad place there. As you know, I'm sure Aurora got $9 million to build a state-of-the-art industrial park. They will be in a much more advantageous position to attract new businesses into that. They're very aggressive, which I think is a very good thing. My compliments to the city of Aurora. They've been doing a great job the last couple of years. With that state-of-the-art park and the fact that their transportation is much better than the city of Hoyt Lakes. If I were them, the first thing I do is trying to attract the existing businesses that Hoyt Lakes has in their industrial park. Well, what can we do about that? It's very simple. Back in the 1970s, not many of you here would remember this, you're not my age. They changed the road from Gilbert into Bilowick because of the mining. That road is Highway 135, which is a state highway. Original plans were for that road to go all the way to Aurora, to what was then the Holiday Station, it's now a Circle K station. We need to ask the state to go ahead and finally complete that highway. This will make White Lakes competitive. It will mean that you will not have to drive through 2 small towns to get to the White Lakes Industrial Park. The former mayor told me that several years ago, there was a major manufacturer who was considering locating in the White Lakes Industrial Park. But as it turned out, they did not want to have to drive through 2 small towns, and I would make the same decision if I was in that position. Again, Aurora is in the transportation advantage. We can get into an advantage with transportation if we could get that highway extended. Again, the good news is this would not cost White Lakes a dime. This would be a state highway. Now, as you probably know, much of that highway already exists in the form of a gravel road. If you drive to Aurora and you keep driving, you go past the gas station, you can keep going on that gravel road. It'd be pretty simple for the state to do. Of course, they would have to pave it. They would have to use an easement on some existing private properties, but it'd be a pretty simple thing to do. During my career, I have built highways, I've built roads. There really wouldn't be much to it. Again, this would involve writing a letter. I would be more than happy if the city would appoint me as a representative to go and lobby with the state and with the Department of Highways for the state of Minnesota. Won't cost you anything. I'm volunteering to do everything tonight for free. I'm not interested in a formal job and a full-time job. I'm retired. I like being retired and having my own schedule. Again, I'll do all this for free. It won't cost the city anything. If you have any questions or comments, again, I won't take up any more time.
Where was this supposed to come out?
I'm sorry, what?
Where was it supposed to come out in Bilowick?
Move around.
It was gonna go around Bilowick. You know, in Bilowick, where you turn, you make that sharp left turn to go into Bilowick.
Yeah.
It would go straight, more or less straight.
You're aware of the fact that Bilowick uses that area as an aeration place for their water, their wastewater treatment.
Well, we would leave it to the state to work.
There
out.
are spray heads out there that you see running.
Yeah, I don't think they would need to go on that property. Actually, there's just 2 private owners according to the county website. So they would have to get an easement on those sites, which would not be a problem for the state to do. It's not something White Lakes would need to get involved in, which is kind of nice.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah, we have your contact information, but yeah, thank you for.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
For guests and citizens forum, is there anybody else that would like to stand up and say anything? Right, hearing nothing, we'll move on to reports from staff. City Administrator Wyberg.
To report, I'll get to the resolutions. The big thing we're working on is the R22 replacement project that, for funding, that's the Money Ducks grant, that's progressing well, and the same last piece of form paperwork is made approved, and move forward with that. And then County Road projects is coming fast and furious, and resolution of past couple of things on that as well, so. A lot of work and grant and funding all right now.
Great, thank you for staying on top of all of that. Moving on to Public Utilities Director Barron.
Oh, water plant side, maybe spiked up a little bit. This is nothing close to what we saw last September though, so shouldn't see any issues. But if you do, please let us know so we can address it. We think we have the situation under control and should get better as the month goes on. Nothing from wastewater.
Great, thank you. City Attorney Luki.
Thanks, Mayor, I don't have anything at this time.
Thank you. Moving on to reports from elected officials, Councilor Grant.
I'm a member for the Youth in Action Group, which their meeting was canceled last week for the second time, so I had yet to attend one of those meetings, but eventually I'll get to one when they reschedule. I did register to go to the League of Minnesota Cities Conference, June 25th and 27th in Duluth. So I will be attending that. I went, I think it was 2 years ago, and there was some good information, so. Attending that, and then the Chamber of Commerce, I know we have our canvas down at Wasabi Sanitation and at the Recycle Center, they are getting full, and we have plans to get our trailer emptied and get those cleaned up now that the weather has got nicer, so the chamber will be working on that. And that's it.
All right, thank you, Councilor Darla.
The only thing I've got is I attended the Citizens Advisory Panel meeting that was held out at Alaskan. It was mostly involving a tour of the plant, which is a little different than it was when we went with the fire department years ago. I know Dean was out there, I didn't get much other information that I thought and shared too.
It was an interesting tour.
Yes, it was something to see the changes that occurred back from when fire department tours, it was cold.
You know, and then just turn the plant down and off as needed.
Yeah, that was
Those kind of.
pretty interesting the way they can do that, and that's, they don't run full time, just when it's needed.
All right, thank you for attending that. Councilor
I just would like to thank the citizens that came out and helped with the community cleanup. It looks a lot better. A few of us, I know we're there. And that's one.
All right, thank you, Councilor Matson.
Other than just, the hiring committee meeting today, we're working on moving forward with the, heavy equipment operator positions. So next steps will be interviews in the next week, I think here, so. Other than that, I have nothing.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, I don't have any major updates, on my end. We have our garden club meeting tomorrow. Yeah, that's about it. So moving on, old business, none. Moving on to new business, 11.1. Recommendation to hire for arts and crafts instructor. For that, and it looks like, there's a recommendation to hire Jill Ekman for that position. She's had it for the past few years. We've been doing a good job at that. Did you talk with Mr. Peterson about that? So I have not heard. But I think he's the one who does who chose the instructor and the summer hire for.
I'm sorry, I take that back, I did not remember.
So that's his recommendation. So would anybody like to make a motion to hire Joe Ekman as the arts and crafts instructor?
So,
We have a motion from Councilor Jarvala. Is there anybody that'd like to second or support that?
I'll support that.
We have a support from Councilor Graham. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. And Joe will abstain on saying that.
So I thought it was really great.
11.2, every year there's some helpers that help out with the arts and crafts instructor, and it looks like they recommend hiring Alexi as the arts and crafts helper. So is there anybody that would like to make that motion to hire her?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion from Counselor Grams, anybody that would like to second or support that?
Second.
We have a second from Counselor Matson, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried, and Jill will abstain from that. Moving on to 11.3, recommendation to hire for the summer seasonal positions in public works, public utilities, recreation and golf course. Recommendations to hire all the following people for those positions. I won't go through all names, just in the interest of time. Anything on your end, the utilities part, or?
We're asking for 2 this year, reason being is one of them, is interested in getting into possibly public utilities work with water wastewater, so we always like to take someone like that, they could be a future employee one day. And the other person we're taking, I'm gonna split that one with Kenny's crew. So most of the time, he's gonna be working for Public Works, they'll keep me within the budget for staffing for summertime.
Then last year, number came out that it's all 1.5 and. So basically keeping the same.
Sounds good.
Do they have limited hours in the summer employment period? They used to call them 80-hour kids.
No, So if they do a good job, we usually turn them loose at about 3, so they'll be there 7 to 3, and then do the work, get out, and then if they have sports or something, we work with them on that, but for the most part, they're 5 days a week.
For how long?
Usually about August, they start to peel off mid-August, and August, depending on what they have for like summer sports and football.
There's a hard number.
Yeah, they used to call them 80-hour kids.
Yeah, I know it's in the budget,
Yeah, for years ago.
some line item.
Is that still a thing? Cause I remember in the past, we've been able to have, if they had like a long vacation over the winter, they've been able to come in and do some cleaning for a day or something, if we had the money in the budget.
We can leave it at, but I wanna say it's like $300 or $200. It's okay, it's just a max, it's not that 80 routine, you know.
There used to be a lot more kids interested, so you had to give everyone 80 hours so everyone could get a little piece of the pie. It's not really like that anymore.
Alrighty, any other comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll take the motion to hire, all the folks listed in here for those positions.
I'll make that motion.
Give a motion from
Second.
Counselor Matson, second by Counselor Jarlov. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Moving on to 11.4, there's a recommendation to hire Wade West as the golf course assistant greenskeeper. Is there anybody that'd like to make a motion to hire Wade?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion from Counselor Grams. Anybody that'd like to second or support that?
I'll second.
We have a second from Counselor Matson. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Moving on to 11.5. 11.5, application to conduct excluded bingo by the White Lakes Water Carnival on July 26th and 7th, 2025 at the White Lakes Community Building.
Why is it called excluded?
Because we are a 501c organization, but we don't hold a gambling license with the state of Minnesota. So nonprofits can apply 4 times a year to do
Okay.
excluded events without having a year-long gambling license. If the chamber holds a license, we can do any kind of gambling anytime on our premises, but if you don't have a system, you have to ask the state permission.
Looks pretty standard, looks like the usual ones we get whenever we have those requests. So I'll take a motion to accept or approve this application for the bingo. So we have a motion from Counselor Jarlov. Anybody that would like to second or support that?
One second.
We have a second from Counselor Hickman. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Moving on to 11.6, bingo at the VFW, July 19th, November 15th, November 22nd of 2025.
That's kind of the same thing. The VFW does hold their own gambling license, but this is the auxiliary doing it. So we have to apply for a separate permit because we're not the licensed organization.
Again, that's familiar to ones we've had in the past, so I'll ask for a motion to approve this application for bingo at VFW with common dates.
I'll make them.
We have a motion from Councilor Matson. Anybody that would like a second to support that? We have a second from Councilor Ekman. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? On to 11.7, Iron Range Historical Society update and maintenance request approval for the memorandum of understanding. So the Iron Range Historical Society provided an update with planned work for 2025 to include brushing the trail under the site, replacing rotten boards, paint, stain, and add a map of St. Louis County to the kiosk. They're requesting approval to perform maintenance at the Longyear drill site for the memorandum of understanding between the IRHS and the city of Clear Lakes. The plan is to install a cable railing on one side of the bridge and repair/replace the timbers at the top of the tripod. This will be at no cost for city maintenance. And then provided supplemental information, provided that memorandum of understanding, and then a letter from the Historical Society. Any sort of comments or questions on this?
I think it's great.
Right, yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah, no cost to the city, having some folks just kind of make that area look a little nicer and make some repairs. I think that'd be very kind of them to do. So is there anybody that'd like to make a motion to approve this request?
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion from Councilor Ekman. Anybody that'd like to second or support that?
So moved.
We have a second by Councilor Dragula. All those in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to 11.8 Horizon South Tower.
Would you like to speak to this? Because I can grab my supplemental information, but, so they're looking to put a cell tower, another additional cell tower from Verizon, correct? And it's a freestanding, no guide wires. And that's close to location where the existing one is now, or an alternative location within a 3-mile radius of downtown Lakes, correct?
Not quite, first of all, my name is Rick Adams, I'm a longtime telecom consultant, been doing that for about 32 years. I worked with the city many years ago, putting the other cell tower out there. My Minnesota Towers built that for AT&T. Right now, that cell tower is owned by American Tower. Verizon tried for 2 years to get on that particular tower, and they weren't able to work out a satisfactory agreement. So they hired me to look for another spot in the city. Originally, I told Dean some wrong information. I reviewed it today. They want to be on the east side of town.
Oh, okay.
Mile, preferably a mile and a half from the city center, only on the east side. They have multiple sites on the west side by Aurora and stuff, so they want to concentrate more on the east side of town. So that, so what they're proposing is a 250-foot self-support tower. It's a little bit different than the one that's out there as a guide tower. So the self-support towers, they take up less ground space. They want to lease about 100-foot by 100-foot area. Where the guide tower is typically that size guide tower, we're releasing about a 550-foot by 500-foot area to include all the guide wires. So I went out and looked at the area, looked at the zoning that the city had, and it appears that on that side of town, the only property that's zoned appropriate for communication towers is owned by the city. And you know, a lot of cities would prefer to get the rent up for these communication towers rather than have a private party get that rent. The other private party out there that has a lot of land is Minnesota Power. Minnesota Power probably has enough money as it is. But I've negotiated leases with Minnesota Power in the past. But so I did look at what I thought was an appropriate spot. It's on the 40 acres that your recycling center is at. And I thought an ideal spot there would be just before the gate. You would, the gate there for the recycling center, we put a driveway off to the left side. And there's a kind of a high spot there, but to at least 100-foot clear area. It's in the woods, obviously it's wooded right now. That way it'd be pretty far away from your gravel pit operation that you have out there. And there wouldn't be any conflict trying to get in the gate or out of the gate. The driveway would just be before the gate. There are other sites out there on the south side of the road that you know, would be closer to an existing guy tower. That would be acceptable, but we thought it would be best try to keep it on a separate parcel. But that's up to the city to decide which space they're going to use, if any space at all. Obviously, if you got a Verizon cell phone, which I have, there's very few bars. And if your phones probably work better on the west side of town than this side. The other thing is, you know, with the new 5G services that are being deployed, which 5G is just, there's no magical word, it's just 5th generation radios for cell phones. They work at about 100 times faster than the 4G system. They carry a lot more data because of the speed and because of the spectrums that were licensed. They got more spectrum width than the traditional cell phone spectrums. Typically, when cell phones were first licensed, they got about 30 megahertz of bandwidth, right around 850 megahertz. And that frequency is still used by the carriers, but a lot of the 5G services that's meant to carry data is in the 3.5 gigahertz range. And so that signal's a lot weaker. The higher you are in frequency, the weaker the signal. The weaker the signal, less coverage you have, obviously. But it's safer for the community too. So that's pretty much what the proposal is. They want to ramp up, except 100 feet by 100 feet. They're looking at a lease rate of $500 per month with a 2% per year escalator. Annual escalator. And other than that, I've been doing this a long time, so if you have any basic questions on this proposal or telecom in general.
So that, took a look at the sites, and we, for the planning and zoning standpoint, given the issue. So,
Yeah,
so
you only have out there, this commercial zoning, it's only on 80 acres out there. And the city owns both of those 40s. Obviously, if we went somewhere else, Minnesota Power's property, we'd have to be in here to try to rezone another 40. So we thought we'd start out trying to work with the city. Because the service is meant to service your constituents. Verizon doesn't have any business without customers. The customers are your constituents.
Could you show us, like on the map, where? I'm just a visual person, so I kind of wanna see where it is.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's really not that I could see right now.
Now I get this last. Sorry. Here's the 240 for parcel Arizona correctly. This is the existing tower. This is the entrance to the.
Oh, that's the.
Recycling center. This is the. In fact, we got a gate here. Right there.
So right off the road there.
Yeah, you're right off this directly. Be pretty close to it too, but.
Anybody else want to see?
Yeah, if all
I
you,
got it, it's just a picture.
I give my copy of that and.
Think about it next year. That help?
Yes. Cause you could tell me something, I just have to see it.
That probably not there with. Where it is. The other thing that I have is, but it's not the exact plan. But it's because the height's not quite. Profit.
How big are
It was on the power building. That they do, there's a lot of times, it varies 24 feet.
And that's what's supposed to be built out, 250,
Yeah. It's street building. So they're not 100 foot, but 100 foot area, but then some smaller area. They have a turn on space. You know, first the big driveway, utilities. And they don't put in buildings, put in. Concrete slab, a couple. Really good-sized cabins, and it's really the top there. You know, the generator, backup generator.
And I assume it's going to just like that, like 5 or 6 feet, and then you put up about 6 feet. You mentioned, well, that, you mentioned 18 feet or trying to hang one on 18 feet, probably.
And what I said is they negotiated with American Tower for a couple of years, couldn't come to terms.
Okay. And would this only be Verizon's here on this tower, or would we be able?
No, actually, Verizon would start out negotiating ground lease with you, but at some point they turn it over to an independent tower company. Probably Vertical Bridge is the company they're working with this year. And then Vertical Bridge would design this to hold more towers and advertise it. One thing that happened when we designed, and I designed that existing tower, I wasn't anticipating these design loads that were put on a tower today. Back when we're doing 2.5 and 3G, we were hanging 20-pound antennas. Maybe I size the tower, 48 antennas, usually 12 antennas per carrier, 4 carriers, 4 different levels. But those antennas are only 20 pounds. Well, now antenna, the 4G antennas weigh 100 pounds a piece, and then they got 2 75-pound radios on the back. So where we had 20 pounds playing for, now we're putting 250 pounds. 250 pounds at that spot. So what's happened is we don't put in buildings anymore because all the radios are on top of the tower. The radios used to be in the building. So the only thing in the cabinets is the equipment to convert AC to DC, because these radios work on negative 48 DC volts. And with the radios on top of the tower, there's actually less trips to a site. Typically a site technical only come out to the site once every 3 months now. Back when we had the radios in the building, the technical on once a month for servicing the radios. But these radios are non-serviceable at this point on top of the tower. So there's no adjustments to be made or anything. So it's completely different technology than even 10 years ago. But it's a lot more data, a lot higher speed. And what's really gonna be pushing a lot of this is, I don't know if you folks have seen ads from both AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, all three of them. A lot of them are doing, offering unlimited high-speed data for $25 a month. So right now, the data I'm getting, the high-speed data I'm getting from my house, from TDS, is costing me $125 a month. And probably it's the same with a lot of your cable carriers and the telephone carriers. But once there's enough capacity in an area, and people are going more to streaming TV apps like YouTube TV and Hulu, they're gonna be using these services a lot more because they can get the same quality of signal as they could from a fiber line to their house, but at a fraction of the cost, like $25 a month. And so it's gonna help the people in your community come up with less expensive communication. And of course, it's gonna really help the businesses in the area, because most businesses need high-speed data. I run a very small business called Red Air. I need high-speed data because I'm constantly transmitting or emailing documents with pictures in them, leases, plans, and all that stuff. Wouldn't be possible without high-speed data. The only problem is my high-speed data costs me like $725 a month instead of the cheaper amount. If I had once Verizon and AT&T get more antennas deployed on existing towers in my area, then they'll sell me high-speed data. But right now, I'm reaching my area is restricted. There's just not enough capacity. Internet service. One of the carriers told me that one internet service is like servicing 15 of these cell phones. And of course, these take a lot more data than you used to, too, because these are just main computers at this point. So data is the whole thing. The voice, our traditional voice still carry over 4G system, 5G systems, just for data. So that's a little bit of background on where we are in the technology. So, like I said, Verizon wants to upgrade their service in White Lakes, and they would really like to negotiate, these terms with the city for this spot.
How far are we from, because it's like on a corner, how far away from the road will this tower be?
Well, that hasn't been determined yet. We can adjust it, back just by the placement. If you want it 100 feet off the road, we can be 100 feet off the road. If you want 150, we can be at 150. The one thing about a cell support tower is a little bit different than a guide tower. Guide tower, the fall zone radius is fixed pretty much at half the height of the tower. So if you've got a 300-foot tower, the fall zone is 150 feet. Now with this tower like this, we can engineer a fall zone of 50 feet or 75 feet, 100 feet, so we can put it in a safe place. So in the unlikely event that they do fail, one is they would typically just bend over. They would, but the engineers like to get fancy. They give us fall zone letters, and they said, well, if the thing bent over and separated somehow, the fall zone would be 75 feet, or we can engineer it for 50 feet. So we'd be relatively close.
How tall is that tower that's right outside of town right now? Do you know?
400 feet. So that falls on radius is about 200 feet. So that's why I didn't really pick a spot yet, because you know, it's a negotiation between Verizon and the city, what you would like to see.
You know, I've been on many different committees over the last 4 or 5 years about broadband and accessibility, you know, on social media and the internet for everyone, and I think this would fill one of those needs. I've heard a lot of people asking about who has Verizon up here, what's the service like, and some people say it's not good service, so I think this would fill the need for the public and then also generate a little income for the city, you know, using our land, so.
I negotiated this. Similar, no, a little bit shorter, it's about 180 foot tower in Aurora. A few years ago, 3 years ago, and then that was self-supported, was built on city property. Just on the, kind of on the, east side of Aurora, a little bit south of downtown. City has some property. I think in that case, they carried the tower company, which was Tillman. I'm gonna get confused here. That was, the Tillman site was for AT&T, Verizon. But, I think they, bought that site for something like $40,000 instead of doing a monthly payment, but I think a monthly. And we could work out a lump sum payment if the city wanted that. I think you're basically $6,000 a year. You probably got an off-taking payment like that. Then say $30,000. That's only 5 years of rent. So.
I guess if I'm reading this correctly today, what our vote would be for is just to say, yeah, we're interested, so go ahead and design. Come up with a leasing agreement, is that what everybody else sees from this, or are you looking for a?
No, just that you're interested, you're willing to move forward. We'll come up with a suggested design, and we'll come up with a lease template and start negotiating. Obviously, anywhere along the point, you have to go on the lease, and you have to go on the site. You know, I selected what I thought was a good site, but it's not the only site. But I think it has some good attributes. It's a little bit easier to site with these self-support towers and guy tower takes so much more space. And I would be involved in most of that. I would be doing the sidewalks. Work with Dean on that. I would be doing the permitting and then be involved with the lease negotiations. So, and I live here in northern Minnesota. Well, not this part of northern Minnesota. I live over by Holland. So, but I've done most of the towers in northern Minnesota on one or the other. In fact, when I did this tower here, when I zoned it, that's when the zoning meetings were involved here. And I brought in 6 towers for the planning board to approve in one city. Because it was a huge expanse, and then I looked at this one, and they said, oh, this isn't our jurisdiction, we had to get this one done. So I only got 5 out of 6 that night.
Any other questions or comments for Rick?
Do we need a motion or do we just need an approval? What's the ask?
I don't actually need an emotion, I just need to know that you're interested and willing to work with Verizon on this deal.
The city attorney would be making sort of motions.
No, it sounds informational and it's something you should pursue in the city.
Oh, sounds good. So yeah, it sounds like we're interested, and then once you have, that leasing agreement and designs and all different types of tangible things that bring forward, and you can discuss it and give it to the council, but yeah.
Do you think that's generally a good spot?
I think it seems out of town and out of the way, and you design things way more often than any of us do, so I think.
Because they're gonna spend quite a bit of money on engineering. The next step, I gotta do a 30-page report on this site, turn it into Verizon, and then they'll see if it's a good site, and it's a good site. And then they'll wanna come out and do a sidewalk and start engineering for real, that would be a year for that. And then they do a site sketch, and then they always have a landowner approve the site sketch, so at that point. It'd come back to the city council for a site sketch approval, once we got the site sketch, and then a lot of times I start working on the lease language at the same time. They have a boilerplate lease that has 14 pages long, so. They have in there their protections, you might, have to review it, see what protections you want in the lease, and typically the leases are. Long term, they're like 50 years. It's a typical lease. So
If for some reason you weren't able to work out on that parcel, would it be able to be built across the road on that other 40?
I just don't want, we just, don't want to interfere with. Cause I don't know. We actually surveyed that lease area that well, don't know. The ins and outs and how to get there. Obviously wouldn't want to lease land that American Tower has leased. It'd just be cleaner across the road, in my opinion, but we could get on the other side of the road.
I agree if we look at the lease that we currently have in the American Towers, we won't look at that again in the insurance. So we do.
And it's on the way, there wasn't any sort of like exclusivity.
Those leases back then, they put as much protections and passwords and everything. Obviously, it had to be close to 20-25 years ago, we did that one. So.
That'll capture the same things.
Any other questions or comments for Rick? Yeah, thank you for taking the time to run over here and the whole presentation.
Okay,
Right, thank you.
I might just, so I don't keep running, I might go to the other side of the road. And propose 2 sites to the horizon, I know which one we're gonna be fixed. And then we'll see where that goes. Okay,
Right, thank you, Rick.
thank you,
Rick, do you
thank
need
you.
this? Rick, do you need this back?
Yeah.
Not really, it's towers. But I just.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty, that was informational. Moving on to 11.9, resolution 2025-010, grant funding systems for the Great Lakes ice system replacement. Do you mind, speaking a little bit to that, administrator?
Yeah, if you look at it's an updated resolution, the other one was dated the 2021, I believe, 006. And this is replacing that, and since the laws have changed. So the Mighty Ducks grant, if you're familiar, which sure you are, is specific to the R22 replacement. So the numbers change after every numbers are, it's more, it's just the Mighty Ducks and just R22 portion of that project. And that's just a resolution, updated resolution.
Thank you for that. Anybody on the council have any sort of questions or comments regarding this? Okay, for that ice system that we are in.
It would be nice to finally use the money we were awarded years ago, so.
Yeah.
All right, with that, I'll ask for a motion to approve that resolution, just allowing Dean and I to sign for that. And
So
we have a motion from Councilor Dragoff. Anybody that'd like to second or support that?
Second.
We have a second from Councilor Ekman. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion will carry. Moving on to 11.10, for PSAH 110 and CR 665 utilities. Reconstruction bid of $860,777.71 to Northland Constructors.
Hello, everybody. Good to see you guys again. So on Tuesday, April 17th, the county received bids for the CASA 110 and the County Road 665 projects. This is about about a half a mile of water main and then roughly 1,000 feet of sanitary sewer along 665 and 110. So this would be the city's portion of that be allocated. So overall, the low bidder of the project was Northland Constructors of Duluth, Minnesota. Their base bid was approximately 14.37% below the engineer's estimate, with the next lowest bid being 8.07% below the estimate. We saw other estimates were within about 5%, so overall, we thought the engineer's estimate was pretty good. And it looks like Northland has provided a very good bid to the city of White Lakes for components that are going to be owned by the city. So based on past performance of similar projects in previous years, it's our opinion that Northland Constructors is qualified to perform this work under the county's contract. If deemed financially feasible, we hereby recommend that concurrence through notification be provided to the county that Northland Constructors be awarded the contract based on the overall billed contract amount of $5.4 million with a city obligation of $860,771. So overall, your portion would be 16% of the overall project that's happening in White Lakes.
What determines our responsibility?
Oh, as in, for this contract?
Yeah.
So your obligation would just be the utilities that were defined in the plan sets provided to the county during the bidding period. So that's gonna be sections of sanitary sewer and water main along 665, and then select water main and gate valves in 110.
So this money is materials cost only, or is it materials and?
Materials and labor by Northland, yep. I did include in the packet here of this report, you can actually see the bid breakdown across all four contractors that bid it, along with the different breakdown between the county portion and the city portion. So overall, on the city components, in general, the contractors were less than the city components, and they were a little bit higher on the county components, so.
I mean, now is the time to replace it once they've got it dug out.
Correct. The county will be doing paving, excavation, along with storm sewer. So your only obligation would just be the other utilities remaining. So.
And our Jake's end, you're kind of pro this happening, just with the road being.
Oh, yeah. You're never gonna see prices this cheap for something like this. I mean, you think of the project we did out here, just on Andover and Suffolk there. That was over $2 million to do that. And we're going through here, we're knocking this up, that's a pretty good stretch. We get new utilities. Theoretically, we shouldn't have to dig that again, at least in my career here, for a lifetime, you know.
Like I said, now it's time to do it.
Yeah, you're gonna end up with new hydrants and stuff, too. It'll be a good deal.
And then the funding piece of it, Bolton Main Street, can you speak to anything about that, or?
Sure. So at this point in time, we did have a conversation with Dean and Jake and Kevin the other day. Your best avenue would be looking at bonding this project currently. There is some other options in the near future between looking at direct appropriations, obviously with the legislator that's put up and down to be determined, but on June 13th, there is, you can ask for appropriations. That is technically for 2026. Other options could be IRRB, looking at ask for IRRB, and I'd say your backfall would be looking at bonding the project, so.
This coming out of Steve Bass, did reach out to Shannon Sweeney and who doesn't take care of her long, and recently, in this week, trying to get some avenues soon.
And for IRRB, some different grant programs usually open in August or August and October. Is there anything that we qualify for in the next cycle of that?
And I
Haven't got that far yet.
haven't got that far yet, this just came in as blocking,
Right.
a few days ago.
And so like July 17th is actually when the new period for IRRB, I think it's on the 17th opens.
Okay.
And so there could be something there to be, some discussion with IRRB.
Yeah, we can look at those revenue sources, either the IRRB or the state appropriations, and then falling back on the bond. Sitting up there. Yeah, just considering with the road being cut out. Having the ability. This is a good idea at this point. Any other comments or questions for either of the chiefs?
I just wanna say this whole project got moved up on us. This was gonna happen a year or two out. And with the storms we had last year, it prompted the county to come in and do this or prioritize this project. So that's why it's kind of flying at us, so. Just so people are aware.
And then the last thing I want to bring up too is this is tied to the Westover reconstruction in some way, shape or form, because we're actually about 90% done with the designs. I met with Jake and Dean and I went over some of where those are at. We should be able to turn that over, and if that's a project that you also want to proceed with, it's a nice basis to have our good bids already in this area to proceed with that project as well. So I'll bring more to come here when I submit those final plans, so.
Anything else from anybody? Hearing nothing, I'll ask for a motion to accept that bill. $860,777.71. Moving forward, the northern constructor completing that work for.
I'll make that motion.
Then motion from Councilor Grant, is there anybody that would like to second support that?
So.
We have a second from Councilor Jarvala, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Thank you, Jacob. And then moving on to the last agenda item, 11.11, resignation from EMS department. Mika Mikula, EMT, turn in her resignation from the EMS department effective May 6, 2025. Is there anybody that would like to make a motion to accept that resignation?
I'll make a motion.
There's a motion from Councilor Pickman. Anybody that would like to second or support that?
I'll second that.
We have a second from Councilor Matheson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. And then moving on to adjournment. Is there anybody that would like to end the meeting?
We'll make that motion.
We have a motion from Councilor Grams. Anybody would like to second or support that? So we have a second from Councilor Jarvala. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion.